What's doing, everybody? Welcome to the channel. If you've never been here before, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, check out plenty of the videos that I have. Everybody else, welcome back. We're going to talk about Sing Sing Prison, Sing Sing Maximum Security Prison, which is in Ossining, New York, 354 Hunter Street in Ossining, New York. It was the first prison that I went to when I left jail. As you see, jail sucks. Jail sucks. Prison sucks too. You know, for those of you that don't know the difference, before I get into a very bad stabbing that I witnessed in Sing Sing, um, I'll tell you the brief difference between jail or prison. For those of you that don't know, I served 17 years in the prison system straight. I was sentenced to 12 and a half to 25 years, did 17 years. Sing Sing was the first prison that I went to. But jail is when you're serving under 1 year, right? The judge gives you 30 days, if he gives you 8 months, if he gives you 10 months, you'd serve that time inside of a jail, a county jail, Nassau County Jail, Rikers Island Jail, Riverhead County Jail. There's county jails everywhere. And if you're serving under 1 year, you do that in jail. If you're fighting your criminal case, and you may end up in prison, but as you're fighting your criminal case, you do that in jail. You're sitting in jail. If the judge gives you more than 1 year, up to prison you go, right? If he gives you 366 days, 1 day over a year, up to prison you go. If you get over 5 years, you usually go to a maximum security prison. But it depends on the charge. It depends what you were charged with. And so that's the difference between jail and prison. I always say jail is just as dangerous as prison. Could be just as dangerous. In jail you have a lot of men that are coming off the street. They're still under the influence of drugs. They're withdrawing from drugs. They don't know what's going to happen to them. So they're mentally and emotionally stressed out. Everyone's stressed out. They were just locked up. A lot of people don't have people on the street who are taking care of them. So they're desperate for food, for cigarettes, for coffee, for money. Jail's just as unstable. Very, very, very dangerous place. Rikers Island Jail is the cement jungle. Really, really bad. A lot of gangs running around crazy, out of control. And then prison has its own set of dangers. Prison is you have a lot more serious criminals in prison than you do in jail. Right? In jail, a lot of guys may be petty criminals. They're doing 60 days, 90 days for shoplifting. You don't have shoplifters up in prison, really. You might have one or two because of that. You might have some, but you got more serious crimes up in prison. You have a lot of petty people in jail, as well as serious criminals. So that's the difference between jail and prison. Not that this video is about that, but I have to explain it. So Sing Sing was the first prison that I went to after I was in Rikers Island. I sat in Rikers Island for 3 years fighting my case, which is a long time, but sometimes criminal cases take that long, And so I was there for 3 years, and the first prison they sent me to was Sing Sing. And Sing Sing is, out of all the prisons I've ever been in, and I was in 7, 8, 9 of them, right? Sing Sing was the most deplorable. Sing Sing was the most disgusting. Sing Sing was the oldest prison. It's the second oldest prison in New York State. Auburn is the oldest prison in New York State. And then they took the prisoners from Auburn and brought them up the river to Sing Sing to build Sing Sing. And that's where the saying came from, being sent up the river. The guys from Auburn went up the river to Sing Sing by boat and built Sing Sing out of the side of a mountain in Ossining, New York. And Sing Sing is filled with dead roaches, live roaches, cats, rats, mice. The building is falling apart. It should be condemned. Sing Sing should be condemned. And so this is the first prison that a lot of guys like it, though. The reason why a lot of prisoners like it is because it's only about 45 minutes from New York City. Most prisons are very far upstate, and Sing Sing is very close to the city. And so you had visits 7 days a week. So your family can get there really quick to see you. That means there was a lot of drugs in Sing Sing because of that, because there were visits every day and you were close to the 5 boroughs. And so it was really easy to get drugs and weapons in there. Most of the officers were straight out of the projects themselves. The officers were from Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Harlem, right? And they knew a lot of the guys that were incarcerated. So they were bringing them cell phones. Well, when I went in, there was no cell phones really, but they were bringing them drugs. They were bringing them weapons. They were bringing them cash. All types of deals were being made. Sing Sing for me was very crazy to be put in, because for those of you that don't know, I had one grandfather who was the police commissioner. Okay, that was my mother's father. He was the police commissioner in New York, right? And then he went into politics after that. And that was my mom's dad. And my dad's dad went to the electric chair, right, for a murder charge. And he went to the electric chair in Sing Sing prison, right? And so here I was being sentenced up to 25 years, and the first prison they put me in is the same prison that my grandfather was electrocuted in. It was very strange. It was definitely a unique set of circumstances. The administration even knew who I was. They knew that my grandfather had went to the electric chair there. I saw where the electric chair was. I went to the actual spot. The electric chair isn't there anymore. It's in a museum. But when they took me to the spot where it was, you can see where the chair was bolted to the floor. It's now in an area where they do vocational training, in the vocational building. But that room has been preserved. You can see where the box was on the wall. You can see where the witness booth was. And you can see where the chair was strapped to the floor and was bolted to the floor. And I stood exactly where the electric chair was, where my grandfather had been electrocuted. And I spoke to him, while I was there. Not that he could hear me, but I said, Grandpa, I can't believe, I'm really sorry to be here, in the same spot where you lost your life. It was just very, very intense. It made me feel like I was in the Twilight Zone. And I would spend about 18 months in Sing Sing prison. But let me get to the story of this really, really bad stabbing. It wasn't the first one that I saw. I saw quite a few there, but this was a bad one. This was when we were going Y2K time. So 1999 going into 2000, and there was a lot of talk in the prison that the prisoners were going to riot, and because just for the sole reason of turning to the year 2000, Y2K, and the administration was hearing these rumors, and I guess one of the officers, he was a new officer, he got nervous that the prison was going to riot, and so he went to the administration and said that he found 7 bullets inside of the fire hose box inside of the prison. And immediately the prison gets locked down. All 1,800 prisoners get locked in their cell. IG comes in, which is the Inspector General's office, and they start an investigation. And what they quickly find out is that the officer who reported finding the bullets in the firebox is the officer that put the bullets in the firebox, because when they went to the arsenal, which is where the officers store their weapons before they come into work, they realized that his 9mm was missing 7 bullets, and there were 7 bullets found inside of the firebox, and he was the one that said he discovered them. And obviously he didn't have that much of a brain. He was quickly arrested and taken out of there. They discovered this on day 1, but they decided to keep us on lockdown for the following 10 days, right? So as prisoners, we didn't know what was going on until we actually heard it on the radio, on the news inside of our cells. We heard that the officer had been arrested. So once prisoners heard that the officer had been arrested, we feel we deserve to come out of lockdown, because as the prisoners, it wasn't our fault. We didn't do anything wrong, but they decided to keep us locked down anyway through New Year's, just to make sure that nothing would happen. And the prisoners weren't having that. So they started setting rolls of toilet paper on fire and throwing them out of their cell. They were setting mattresses on fire and pushing them out of the cell. And they were falling 3-4 stories down to the flats. I was on the flats. I was on Q Gallery. I was in Q61. That was my cell. It goes QRST. Like it's like 4 companies high, and then on the other side is the alphabetical order, So now there's mattresses on fire. You got to imagine if you're in your cell, you could only, and you're looking out the bars. You're standing on the bars, holding on to the bars, looking out of your cell. All you could see is really what's directly in front of you, and you could look to the left and the right a little bit. You could see down the gallery, or what they call the company, a little bit. but you have a mirror in your cell. They sell plastic mirrors in commissary so you can shave, so you can have a mirror. And guys, what they do is they put the mirror outside of the bars and they look, and then you can see all the way down the company in either direction. A lot of guys just leave the mirror on the bars. They balance it on the bars. So even when they're laying in bed, they could look up and see. You'll have officers say, hey, take the mirror down, take the mirror down. But officers really don't give a shit too much about a mirror on the bars. They tell you to take it down, you take it down. But guys leave the mirror on the bars all day. This way they could look and they could see down the company both ways, see what's going on. So when I stick out this mirror, I see fire everywhere. And mattresses are burning, smokes, cops are running around putting out fires, prisoners are screaming and yelling, they're shaking the bars. I mean, they want to come out, and we all want to come out because it was this officer that got us locked up with these bullets, and we want to come out. It's New Year's, but we stay locked up for 10 days. That means no visits, no phone, no commissary. We get fed in our cell. They're delivering the food to our cell. It's just miserable. In dirty, nasty cells with all the noise and people screaming and guys playing chess. One guy's 10 cells away from another guy, and they're playing chess, screaming out the moves at 10 o'clock at night. B3 to 5-8. Crazy, just complete chaos. No, Sing Sing is one of those prisons where there's not a lot of courtesy in prison. There's not a lot of respect but Sing Sing is wild, right? I'll tell you the difference. Before I get to the stabbing, then I'm going to tell you in a minute. Sing Sing is like a free-for-all prison. Right? Because the guards, the officers really don't have much control in Sing Sing at all. I told you most of them are from the projects and they know the prisoners themselves. There's officers walking down the hallway in Sing Sing smoking a joint. Okay? And this was when weed was highly illegal. The officer is walking down the company smoking a joint, passing it to the prisoner, and they're smoking a joint together. I mean, complete chaos. Now, this is nice if you're, you just want to do crazy time and you want to feel like you're not locked up and you're smoking a joint and you're drinking and you're doing drugs, right? But that causes a real unstable environment for someone who just wants to do their time, for someone who's concentrating on just doing their time to get home, right? You're in this place that's out of control. And then you could go to a place like Attica. It's the complete opposite, right? That's a place where there is no screaming and yelling at night, where there is no officers really walking around smoking. I got high with one cop in Attica, on the down low. I smoked a joint with him, but he was real cool. All the prisoners liked him. He was real cool with us. But in Sing Sing, this was prevalent behavior, right? And so Attica is more like a military, you know what I mean? Like a boot camp. So every prison has its own feel. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. Every prison runs differently. Most of them have the same rules. There are some rules in one place that aren't in another place, but most of them have the same basic rules. And some prisons enforce the rules strictly, and other prisons are much more lackadaisical on the way they do that. So how you do your time depends what facility you're in, or how it is to do time. I could say I was in prisons that were great. I don't mean great. I mean great as far as prisons are concerned. I was in a place like Mid-Orange. Mid-Orange is what they called the best kept secret in the Department of Corrections. I was eating lobster and drinking wine, and like Goodfellas in Mid-Orange. There was a lot of wise guys there. There was a lot of old timers there. Anyway, let's get to the stabbing. Let's get to the crazy stabbing. During the lockdown, I heard the Jamaicans were having an argument with some young gang kid, right? And I heard them beefing back and forth, and it was clear that there was going to be a problem because one of them screaming, "Yo, when we get out of here, when the lockdown's over, I'm going to see you, son. Don't worry, I'm coming. Yo, f you, da da." So there was a beef taking place. I don't know what the beef was over, but I know that the Jamaicans were having a beef with this kid that was in one of the gangs. And the Jamaicans are serious in prison. My man Yush was like one of the big Jamaicans in there. There were three big Jamaicans in there that I knew well. One of them was Andrew, one of them was Rusty, and one of them was Yush. Yush was one of the big drug dealers in the prison too. He'd be walking around the prison with 500-600 cash in his pocket, 20-30 bags of weed, and that was his hustle in prison. Like he was in Washington Square Park, that he would go out to the yard and just sell weed. And yes, he would get busted once in a while. He'd go to solitary, he'd come back out. That was his thing. He was a hustler. Rusty was a good dude. He was another big Jamaican with a lot of power. A lot of Jamaicans are serious people, man. They don't play inside of the prison. They're real serious. I remember when there was a little gang war going on between the Jamaicans and this gang, and they were cutting each other with scalpels and fighting. The Jamaicans finally got tired of it. They pulled out swords. I'm talking about 14, 16, 18-inch pieces of steel, and a couple people got killed. They said enough was enough. So it's a serious place, man, serious place. But anyway, we finally, after the 10-day lockdown, we come off of the 10-day lockdown, and everyone wants to go to the recreational yard, right? Because we've been locked down for 10 days. Right? We haven't been able to get outside. Guys want to lift weights. Guys want to play handball. Guys want to see their boys and just hang out, smoke a joint, go out, and guys want to play soccer. It's a recreational yard. We've been locked up for 10 days during New Year's. Guys are dying to go outside. And so when they call it over the loudspeaker system, right? On the rec, right? They start cracking all the cells, and it's the craziest noise you ever heard. Sing Sing is an old cell block. And so in newer prisons, they press a button and the doors open electronically. In Sing Sing, there's the big lever that they pull. Boom! And all the prison doors get unlocked at the same time, right? And so you hear all the steel, boom, 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 all the cells opening, and all the guys start pouring out to go to the yard. And that's when the Jamaicans attack the guy that they had a beef with. And as he's coming down the stairwell, I'm making a right turn to go to the yard. They attack him, and there's 3 Jamaicans on this one guy, and they're stabbing him. And he doesn't have any offense. He's curled up defensively, and they're all stabbing him with shanks. And I said, that guy's dead. That guy's definitely dead. But I want to get out of there. I'm not sticking around to see this. I don't want to be a witness. I see what's going on, and I peel off, and I make it out to the yard. And that guy died. That guy ended up dying. He was killed. And I believe that 1 or 2 of the Jamaicans ended up getting caught for that. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I remember I went to my boy Yush afterwards. And of course, they locked the prison down again. We had just came off a lockdown, and they closed the yard. They brought everyone back into their cell, and they locked us down again for like another 3 days because of the murder. But I remember asking Yush what happened. You know what I mean? And he told me that the guy that got stabbed up was a homosexual. He was gay, and he said some really inappropriate stuff to one of the Jamaicans. You know what I mean? And the Jamaicans don't play that. They don't like, most Jamaicans don't like homosexuality. So I said, Yush, what happened? He says, what a guan fish, man. He said, bumbo clat. He says, he told me that the guy was gay. And so they and said some inappropriate stuff to the Jamaican, and so that was their retaliation. They stabbed them up for that. And yeah, Sing Sing was wild, man. Sing Sing was a wild place, really dirty, really nasty, and not a place you want to do time in. I ended up getting kicked out of Sing Sing and sent up to Attica. I got into some words with the warden really bad. Over some contraband that I got mailed in a package, and he kept calling. Whatever, that's a whole nother story. I told it once in a video, but yeah, those stabbings in Sing Sing used to take place a lot like that. A lot of cuttings, a lot of stabbings. Sing Sing is also the place where I saw a lot of people get their faces melted with boiling cooking oil. They sold cooking oil inside of the commissary, and you were allowed to have a hot pot in your cell. And the hot pots didn't boil. The hot pots were to make hot water for coffee. That was the real intention of a hot pot. But what you did with the hot pot was you took the bottom of the hot pot off, and you took out the thermostat and then put the bottom back on. You weren't allowed to do this. It's called an altered hot pot. And if they did a cell search and they found that you had altered your hot pot, they would give you a misbehavior report for an altered hot pot. Nothing would really happen to you. You might get 30 days loss of commissary. You might get 60 days loss of packages. You might get 15 days keep lock inside of your cell. Altered hot pot wasn't the biggest deal, but you weren't allowed to do it. But everyone did it because once you remove the thermostat from the hot pot, you can cook inside of it. Now you can put a cup of water in there with a bag of rice. You can make your rice. You can make pasta in there. You can make beans in there. All stuff that they sell in the commissary. You could cook a meal out of your hot pot because it enabled your hot pot to boil. And so what guys would do is they would get the cooking oil from the commissary, they would pour it in the hot pot, they would bring it to a boil right before they were going to open all the cells, right? Let's say they were going to call recreation, or they were going to call package room, or they were going to call any type of what they call a call out for the cells to open up. If a guy had a problem with another guy and he wanted to solve it this way, he would pour the boiling baby oil in the hot pot, bring it to a boil, and then when the gate opened, he would throw the boiling baby oil, the boiling cooking oil in the other guy's face. And it melted the face. It disfigured the person for life, you know. And you would see guys with half of their face melted. You know what I mean? Or their entire face melted, like it was out of a horror movie. And this was a form that I've witnessed a dozen times, more than a dozen times. I've seen guys get baby oil or cooking oil boiling thrown in their face. And guys would do really sick stuff, like they would take the boiling baby oil and or the boiling cooking oil, and they would also mix rice in there. So when they threw it in the other person's face, you had all the rice and the boiling oil that would peel someone's face. And the first instinct of someone would be to grab their face, and the skin would peel off of the face. And it was real nasty. You had to be careful. As I say, you got to be careful in prison on who you offend. That's why I said prison is about being respectful and carrying yourself like a gentleman. Someone's not going to throw boiling baby oil in your face or boiling cooking oil in your face if they're just trying to bully you, or if they're trying to extort you, or if you're a weak person, someone they consider a sucker. They're not just going to go out of their way and throw boiling cooking oil in your face. That was done when someone had a serious problem with someone, when someone had a beef with someone, when someone just did something seriously wrong, where they violated another prisoner, and that's how they would respond. Or they would take the scalpels and the razors and cut each other's face open with scalpels and razors, and it was just a crazy place to be, man. A real crazy place to be. So that was a little story about Sing Sing, and I'm going to wrap this up for now. I got some things to do today, but I'll get back to you soon. Jail sucks, guys. Prison sucks. Stay out of there. It is not Disneyland. A lot of you youngsters are running around thinking there's no repercussions. You know what I mean? And you'll end up in a situation like that, and that's what you're going to have to live with. True animals. I'll see you guys later.